Share Conference presents Uros, Krcadinac I Lazar Pascanovic, Klub putnika Srbije.
Okay, so as you just heard, we're from the Serbia Travel Club. I'm Lazar and this is Uros. And we're going to talk a bit about traveling. So, first of all, I'd like to start with a question. So you've probably all wondered at a certain point, how do we learn about the world? How do we find out what this world is really like? Well, obviously we have books, papers, music, the internet, television, and so on. But no matter how we receive this information, it's always at second hand, which means it's always biased. For example, if we get an information from the media, obviously what media outlets are trying to do is compete and fight for our attention and not trying to present us with a balanced image of the world. So these information that we receive, they're basically what we know about the world. And what we know is what we build our own personal map of the world, according to what we build our map of the world. So if our knowledge is generic, our map of the world won't be any better. For example, it's example of one such map. So it's a map that doesn't stem from personal experience and from personal effort, but has been ready-made and, so to speak, semi-digested and handed to us on a silver platter. A map on which medieval sea serpents and dragons have been replaced by contemporary propaganda, spin stories, and so on. Okay, so what's wrong with that? Well, the thing is, what we know determines what we feel, and what we feel determines what we do. So what can be done about it? How do we bypass the standard information channels and try to acquire first-hand knowledge of the world? Well, obviously, there are many ways to do that, but we'd like to focus on one of them right now, which is we can go out and see for ourselves what the world is like. Namely, we can travel. We can move personally and physically from place to place and from person to person. By travel, of course, I mean independent travel, so without the help of travel agents, without visiting the tourist hotspots and so on. We can collect personal stories and personal experiences and then build our own map of the world according to that. However, most people don't know it's possible to travel like this. So that's why we started an organization and a website called Serbia Travel Club to basically show the people that it can be done and to tell them how to do it. We see travel not as some kind of futile thrill-seeking or adventure-seeking, but rather as a tool for personal growth, an intimate learning experience, and a way of forming personal bonds with the planet. Our website is also a platform for collecting personal travel stories and all sorts of travel info, like tips and tricks and how-tos and so on, and sharing them with wider community. So we're talking about stories that were not made for profit, nor out of any other kind of interest, and whose goal is to inform you and to entertain you to a certain point, but more importantly, to inspire you, to make us overcome the kind of emotional laziness that we usually feel when it comes to anything outside our most immediate life context, and to try to get out of our cultural and geographical bubble and connect with the world in its wholeness, in its entirety. And that's like the basic idea of the Serbia Travel Club, and we've even coined a fancy term for it. We call it personal globalization.
Okay, so now I want to tell you about a travel project of ours, about our travel to Africa, which is an example of an informal, independent, creative travel project that Lazar was talking about. So Lazar, Marco, he's the third guy, he's not with us at the moment, and me, we traveled for 3 months through the African continent. We traveled through many countries: Serbia, Bulgaria, Turkey, Syria, Jordan, Egypt, Sudan, Kenya, Uganda, Rwanda, Congo-Kinshasa, Tanzania, Zambia, Namibia, and then we came back by a plane through South Africa. And at one point we separated, that this is this node in Central Africa, and we traveled for a month being separated. And this trip was really low budget. we didn't need a lot of money for it because we hitchhiked a lot, as you can see. It was not always easy. And we use every kind of transportation that we could: buses, trucks, cattle trucks. This is a cattle truck in Namibia. This is also one truck in one of the countries that we hitchhiked through. And it was not really comfortable, but that's what we want to tell you. That giving up comfort, you get something much valuable. You get the real experience, the real life, and the real stories. As for the accommodation, we slept here and there. This is a woman in Namibia. She's wearing the traditional Herero hat that resembles a cow, because they believe a good woman should look like a cow. Anyway, as for the accommodation, as I said, we slept here and there. We slept at some really nasty places, but most of the time we slept with local people, with local hospitable people that we found on the internet. We lived with them, we talked with them, we had long, sincere conversations, intense conversations. We shared our worldviews, we shared our ideas. In other words, we shared stories. And those people were people from writers and professors to the poorest workers and mechanics, even people who live in the wilderness, people like the Maasai, Bushmen, and Pygmy tribes. And through all this time, we collected these stories and tried to overcome the differences in culture, differences in religion, all these differences that exist between people in the world. And I will tell you I will name just a few of those people. This is Abdu from Cairo. He's a blogger, an engineer, and writer who lives in Egypt and is also an atheist, so it's really hard for him in a country like that. And during the revolution in Egypt, after we came back, it happened after we came back from Africa, he was telling us all the time about the information, real-life information that happened that couldn't be found anywhere else in the media. We found that because he was our friend, and he's supposed to come to Serbia this or next year. This is Uncle Abbas on the right side. On the left, it's me. It's a retired bureaucrat who lives in North Sudan, in this little village in Sahara, near the Nile, where houses are made of mud. And he has only one room, and in this only one room, he has this suitcase that is like a strange altar of his beliefs, where he has a picture of Lenin Marx, and some African communist leaders, and he was telling us how it is important to believe in the universal humane message of every religion and ideology. And this is Doris, a humanitarian worker from Kenya, from Nairobi. She travels often to South Sudan and Somalia because she believes that if she can do something to change things for the better, she needs to do it. And another interesting thing about her is that she's building a small church in her hometown because that's what she promised to her father on his deathbed. This is a spider, big as my hand, that lives in a house of Charles in Zambia, a very poor mechanic who, even though he has a wife and a child, cannot live with them because of the strange traditions that exist there. And those traditions, according to those traditions, he cannot live with his wife until he buys his wife from her parents. And he doesn't have enough money or cows because it's really expensive, so he has to live alone with the spiders and basically nothing else. And we slept with him on the floor, and he said we should not be afraid of spiders because they cannot go through the anti-malarial nets against mosquitoes, but we should be afraid of tribal ghosts that attack sleepers in those areas. Then, these are the paintings of this wonderful group of painters from Rwanda and the artists that we met, who are building this fantastic new cultural center 15 years after the war and genocide in Rwanda. And it's fantastic because they have so much energy and their center is so good, even though they have a lot of problems, much more than we do. And they told me that poverty and complicated history and war wounds should never be an excuse for apathy and inaction in a society. Another story, this is David from Kenya, from a really, really small village where he is the chief of a Maasai tribe, local Maasai tribe, and this is wilderness. So nothing else except for these little boxes, little houses made of cow dung. Nothing else, just endless bush. and wild animals like elephants and lions and hippos. And we slept with him, we lived him for a while. We saw how local church looks like, local school looks like. And we exchanged stories during the night, and we found out that he had to kill a lion when he was young, because that's how you become a man in the Maasai society. You have to kill a lion, and then you have this wound. I mean, he has this wound because lion hurt him. But at the same time, we found out that he wants to send his children to college, but also wants the children to come back. Somehow he wants to find this connection between his world, which is like 10,000 years old, and the contemporary world. And you might ask, how did we find David? How did we find all these people? But how did we find David? He lives in the wilderness. He's a chief of a Maasai tribe. Well, we found him through these sites for hospitality exchange, because David has a profile on Couchsurfing. And he opened this profile because next to his little village there is a town of Narok, a little town of Narok, with no roads, but they do have an internet cafe, and he went there and he created this profile, and he says, I'm a Maasai chief on 10 villages, and just like everybody else. So it is possible to find people like that. Yeah, and these stories that I've just told you are just some of the stories, some of the fates that we met on our journey. And those stories were never told by traditional media, because for traditional media, these stories are tiny and insignificant. But for us, it's different. We believe in those stories of seemingly tiny and insignificant people who are struggling to find their ways and find their answers to life and the world just like we do. And so the map from the beginning, with the sea serpents and dragons and hell and all the danger, becomes filled with our own emotions, our own stories, our own experiences. And this is what traveling can do. Meeting, learning, and feeling this compassion about the world becomes not only possible but inevitable. And not only for us who traveled, but also for the people on the Serbia Travel Club website. And that's what Lazar is going to tell you right now.
Okay, so we have a website, as I've already said. And all these stories that we've connected, we've shared on the Serbia Travel Club website in various forms, such as text, graphics, photos, music, videos, and maps. So this way, we were constantly, throughout the journey, communicating actively with the readers of our blog, thus giving them a chance to see one possible and most certainly very personal image of certain African countries. And we tried our best to make it a two-way communication. Before we started, we had made a DVD with a selection of photos, music, and literature from Serbia to show to the people we meet along the way. And it was very interesting. Their reactions were very interesting. Many of them were actually quite surprised to see that we had forests and villages and small houses and poor people and bad roads and so on, because they had never imagined that Europe could also be something like that. Blogging on one such trip wasn't easy. We were writing everything down and sketching and whatnot in our notebooks, and then we just typed it all in internet cafes when we had a chance, with pretty bad internet connection and power going out all the time. But since we were receiving a lot of positive feedback from our readers, it kind of kept us going, kept us motivated to keep blogging. Our readers also had a chance to take part in our journey. For example, they could post their questions in the comments of our blog for us to pass on to the people we were meeting along the way. There's one interesting question that was posted while we were traveling around Sudan. One of our readers asked, since Sudan is such an ethnically and culturally diverse country, is there anything like a common Sudanese identity? So we found this question rather interesting, and we asked some people in Sudan what they thought about it, and we posted their answers in our blog, which in turn sparked a lot of interesting forum discussions. Apart from that, we've also managed to do some pretty concrete and dare I say, quite unexpected things with our project. For example, when we were in Nairobi, in Kenya, we had this strategy of splitting and finding different hosts through this hospitality exchange network. So in Nairobi, one of us, Marco,
The third guy.
the one that's not here, stayed with a girl called Nancy, who lives in the slums on the outskirts of Nairobi, and she is a single mother of 2. And he stayed there for about a week. And after that, he wrote down her life story and posted it in our blog. And after reading it, our readers spontaneously decided to self-organize and to raise a certain amount of money to send it to her for schooling of her daughters. So why is this example important? Well, it goes to show that our readers felt that they were not just passive consumers of information or entertainment, but they felt the need to take action and to get personally involved in what was going on. So we may even say that our blog was a communication channel, an information channel that was temporarily established between Serbia or wherever the readers of our blog were and people we were meeting in Africa. We had 2 groups of people that had previously been connected only through governments, mass media, corporations, and so on, and they didn't have much chance to exchange some personal information, idea, emotions, and our blog actually enabled them to do that even for a short while. So that was also one of the points of this African journey, of this project.
Yeah, and I will give you now an example of how our blog and our website managed to connect people. It's a small example, a small story, but very dear to us. And it involves a guy whose name is Sam, who lives in the south of Uganda, and who, even though in his 20s, he still works as he works as a physical worker, but he still tries to finish his high school because he doesn't have time to finish his high school. And he lost his parents, he lives with his aunt, and he lives in these rural areas far away from tourist routes. And it was raining heavily, we were walking near the lake, and then all of a sudden, he just said, "I am a very happy man." And I was kind of surprised, and I asked him why. And Sam said, "Because I really like to draw. I like to paint. That is my passion." And then I took out my notepad and asked him to draw something for our readers. And this is what he drew. But he did not only draw that, he also wrote his email, as you can see, biamugisha@yahoo.com. And our readers were delighted when we published that on our website, and they even sent him emails. They sent him a lot of emails, and he was very happy because of that. And then he sent us some more of his drawings. And this wonderful communication happened between Sam and our readers, communication between people who share almost nothing. Differences in culture, differences in religion, differences in mindsets. Everything that could divide people divided Sam and our readers from the Balkans, but they managed to have this communication. And words were not even necessary for that. Simple, naive drawings were enough for the communication to be established. And this little thread was created between a person in South Uganda via Serbia Travel Club website to all the people in the Balkans. And so at the very moment, all the boundaries that exist between people were seemingly dissolved and destroyed. And this communication that was created was also direct, and this is what Lazar was talking about. No government, no corporation, no religious organization of any kind stood in between. I'm sorry. No selfish interest of any kind. This is what traveling can do, and this is what personal globalization is all about for us. Connecting with the world in its wholeness, but on a very personal level. And to achieve this, you don't necessarily need money. That's what we want to tell you. You need internet, of course, you need the media technology, but the main thing you need is the will, curiosity, and desire to do such a thing. And giving up comfort, of course. In other words, you need this compassionate and creative travel culture that we are trying to build. And that's why I want to ask you to join us, because traveling is not only a great personal medium for understanding and learning about the world. It's more than that. It can be more than that. It's also a creative act of wider social significance. And now I want to tell you about Okay, just 1 minute. I want to tell you about our final project. It's called the Travel House. We plan as a Serbia Travel Club to rent an apartment in Istanbul. And in that apartment will be free for all the travelers. And they should come during July and August and share with us all their stories, and we should create something together. We should explore Istanbul, we should connect with locals, and we should all make things, texts, photos, drawings, so at the end we can have this travel portrait of Istanbul. So if you want to contribute to the project, you can visit our website or just connect with us after the talk. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay.
Nemamo pitanja.